I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well, I know I'm gonna be.
Oklahoma gets dominated in Dallas. The Sooners fall to the Longhorns by a final score of 34-3. And man, really just a game where if you thought Oklahoma's offense had been inept prior to this moment, then this was really an eye opener about just how bad the Sooners have become offensively. 18 total first downs for the game, which crazy stat, Caleb, is that 18 total first downs is one more first down than what the Longhorns ended up having. The Sooners go 4-15 on third down, 239 total yards of offense, just 4.9 yards per pass play. And the killer was 2.4 yards per rushing attempt as Texas uses a huge second quarter explosion, 3 touchdowns to turn a 3-0 lead for the Sooners into a 21-3 deficit. That just kind of got worse as the game went on. The Longhorns outscoring the Sooners 13-0 in the second half to a 34-3 lead. Caleb, here's my question. 2 years ago, Oklahoma didn't have Dylan Gabriel. That was the infamous Davis Bevel game. Suddenly, that's difficult to say, but that was the infamous Davis Bevel game. And Oklahoma's offense was just non-existent. That was an embarrassing moment for the Sooners, but it was kind of excusable because your starting quarterback was out and there was just no one to back him up. And that was a Jeff Levy run offense. Now you go into this game, and I get it. I get it being down the 5 receivers. I get all of that. But the reality is this not the most embarrassing loss of the Brent Venables tenure at the University of Oklahoma? And the reason I say that is because you've got your, quote, future at quarterback and Michael Hawkins. It's not, you didn't move the ball. You weren't effective, not because you didn't have a quarterback. It's just because you have an inept offense. Is this the most embarrassing loss of the Brent Venables tenure?
I still think 49-0 is more embarrassing, but it's pretty darn close. It is definitely up there.
Yeah, I mean, again, the only thing I'm going to say about that is, again, that 49-0 loss, Braden Willis was basically your quarterback in that game. Texas just completely dominates this game, 406 total yards of offense. For me, and even Brent Venables said it after the game, the biggest surprise was how bad the defense faltered in this game. And we're going to get into that. But Oklahoma just offensively, they couldn't generate momentum right from the get-go. Billy Bowman gives them that gift. That leads to a missed field goal. And there was the inability to move the ball consistently. There's the inability to protect the quarterback. 2.3 yards per rush attempt. It's just, Michael Hawkins was sacked 5 times. It's the same song and dance every week. And one of the things that you and I talked about in the past was, is this the best the offensive line is going to be? And I said yes. And you kind of held out hope. Oh, no, they'll get better. They'll get better. But it's the most healthy they've been all season. The continuity coming off of the bye week, and then you go out and you put up this clunker. I don't think the offensive line's getting any better.
I mean, I don't think the offensive line played terrible. They didn't play great. It wasn't their worst game they've had this season. Hawkins had time, and I'll get into my opinion on what this offense main issue is a little bit later on. But I mean, I get that we have 5 sacks, but a lot of that was Hawkins just holding onto the ball way too long, or Hawkins is moving out of the pocket way too soon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple times where he just needs to get rid of it, and he doesn't. Two of the longest, two of the biggest losses we had were because of that.
Mhm.
I think of that screenplay that Texas read perfectly, and he just eats it instead of just throwing it over Barnes's head out of bounds. And there's another time where he has, I think it was Petaway open, and he hesitated. I think he pumped things like two times, takes a sack. And then there's another time where he catches the ball out of his hand.
Right.
He goes to throw it, and then he stops it, and he gets sacked. So I don't know if that's just him not having confidence, him just playing scared, or what that is. But three of those sacks easily could have been avoided.
That's a fair point. I can't argue that point. And it's just what you're saying is you got a freshman quarterback looking like a freshman quarterback in the biggest game of his life. Oklahoma's offense collectively 3.6 yards per snap. The longest play of the game was 15-yard pass to Zion Kearney. You contrast that to Texas, 7.4 yards per pass, 5.9 yards per run. And they had six plays that went for 23 yards or more against Oklahoma's defense, with the longest play being a 44-yard play. It's just those numbers right there, without talking about any individual stats, just those numbers alone, that's not something you can overcome. And then you couple that with the two fumbles, so Oklahoma loses the plus minus and the turnover margin. They lose for the second time this year on that in that category. The other time was the loss to Tennessee, and now you got the loss to Texas. They just did too many things that they shouldn't have done as a heavy underdog against the top team in the nation.
Yeah, and it just was an ugly game from this Oklahoma team on both sides of the ball. And again, I don't want to kind of give too many of my thoughts away before we get to those segments, but it was just, I felt like it was a strong start. Like you said, do you get that pick from Billy Bowman, missed the field goal? I mean, you had three offensive possessions where Texas went three and out, and you
Mm-hmm.
got 3 points.
Yeah, you kind of felt like at the end of the first quarter, you're winning 3-0. You're kind of dominating the Texas offense, and then just the floodgates break open there in that second quarter. And I really felt like we just watched the life suck out of this defense as they went through that second quarter.
It was the the OU defense knocked the ball out and it rolls into the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
Texas jumps on it for a touchdown. And then the first play, I'm pretty sure it was the first
Right.
play, we get the ball right back to him after a long drive.
Mm-hmm.
And they go down and score. And then the first play again, we get the ball right back to Texas. Now, our defense forces that field goal. They missed the field goal. But it was just, again, yeah, there's just no life left from both sides of the ball.
Well, there wasn't a game last week, so we didn't do a recap of for that podcast. So we didn't get to do true or false. And so we're moving that into this opening introduction segment of the podcast this week, and you're asking those questions. So if you're ready, let's just go ahead and jump in, and we'll do true or false, and then we'll talk about Oklahoma's offense, Oklahoma's defense, and coaching changes or coaching staff and all that stuff. And so we got a lot to talk about, so let's just run in here and let's start with true or false.
So the first one I have is true or false. Having Dylan Gabriel on this team doesn't change anything about this offense.
I think it's false. I just because think about what you just said. You said 3 of the 5 sacks could easily be on Michael Hawkins for holding the ball too long, making the wrong read, not throwing it away, and eating it when he shouldn't have. Dylan Gabriel's not going to make those mistakes. I think the other thing is Dylan Gabriel's maybe not a stronger arm, but a more precise arm. Think about something we've talked about with Michael Hawkins that was the difference between him and Jackson Arnold, was that Michael Hawkins against Tennessee and against Auburn seemed to make a quicker read and a quicker throw. And we didn't see a lot of that Saturday against Texas. Dillon Gabriel's experience, his moxie, it changes the dynamic of the offense. Now, the play calling, if you want to get into the play calling, maybe changes because you trust the quarterback a little bit more than what the trust is in Michael Hawkins. But the reality is, I think Dillon Gabriel is one of the top quarterbacks in the country right now. You get the win over Ohio State. He's going to be, we talked about Heisman contenders kind of last week. Dillon Gabriel is going to be on that short list as a Heisman contender as we're 6 weeks into the season, not just because they beat Ohio State, but because of his stats, the good decisions he's making, and the efficiency in which he's running the offense. I think if you want to blame Michael Hawkins for the issues on the offense, Dillon Gabriel solves that. I think if there's a play calling issue because of trust and understanding and maturity, Dillon Gabriel solves that. So for that reason, I think it's true. I think it's false then. I don't think this offense is the same with Dillon Gabriel as it was with Jackson Arnold or Michael Hawkins.
Okay. And you kind of touched on my next two true or false questions. The second one, true or false, Hawkins has to be given more trust in this offense.
I think so. I think that's true, but I also understand the hesitancy because you don't want to destroy his confidence. But I think you can overcorrect and destroy his confidence with what you're doing now, not giving him kind of the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, just showing him different areas of the offense, but not letting him have the entire offense. And so I think they do need to get more, let him make mistakes and let him learn. He seems to be, based on what they've said, a guy who likes to study film. He seems to be, based on what they've said, is a guy who works hard. He seems to be a guy who's trying to connect with his teammates. You know, there's the social media post of him taking the offensive line out to have dinner and things like that. So he's punching all the right, dots on the ticket. So let him make mistakes and let him learn from it. I mean, he has one turnover on the season now, and that's the fumble he gave up Saturday. So give him more and see what he does.
Third one is true or false. Seth Luttrell needs to give up play calling. Someone else has to give play calling a go.
That's such a complicated question. Basically, to answer it makes you pick a side because the fire Seth Luttrell train has never had more people on board than what it does right now. And so you believe one or two things about Seth Luttrell. You believe that he's handcuffed with a poor offensive line and just a decimated receiving core. The offensive line can't create lanes to run the ball. You don't have receivers that can get in space and run the routes and get open. You don't have a quarterback who can make it through the progression to get to the right guy. You got all those issues. It's hard to call plays. I think here's the reason why I think this is false. And this has nothing to do with whether you fire Seth Luttrell or whether you don't fire Seth Luttrell. I don't know what could work in this offense. I really don't. They can't run the football. They haven't been able to run the football all season long. It's not that they're not trying. I mean, Javonte Barnes had 20, how many carries did he have? I think Hawkins had the most with 20. Javonte Barnes had 14 carries. Taylor Tatum had 2. Salchuk had 2. So you ran the ball 38 times. It's not like you didn't try. You can't run the ball. And Taylor Tatum, he got 2 carries for 17 yards, but also the fumble. So you got a turnover prone offense. You can't run. You got receivers who can't find a way to get open. And you got a young quarterback who's just begging to make a play, but he doesn't know where to go. Change the play caller if you want to, but it doesn't change anything that happens on the field. And that's why I think it's such a difficult situation for Brent Venables. You fire Seth Luttrell. It's not working. I get it. Whether that's Seth Luttrell's fault, whether it's Bill Bedenbaugh's fault, whether it's Michael Hawkins and the offensive line and the depleted receiver core. I mean, it's not working. The offense is not working. It's one of the worst offenses in the country through 6 weeks of football. They had a bye week and they came out and just pooped down their leg against the top rival for the second time in 3 years. It's not working. But if you give up play calling, what would you do differently? Because the next guy probably is not going to trust Michael Hawkins any more than Seth Luttrell does. The next guy's not going to make the offensive line open up holes. The next guy's not going to get the running back to run through the right gaps. If the running backs are missing the gaps, that's on the running backs at this point. You're 6 weeks, 6 games into the season, 7 weeks into the season. So all those things that are happening on the field, that's not going to change by the guy who makes the play call. So change the play caller. It's not going to change the result, in my opinion. So you might as well just ride through it and then just kind of give it a good evaluation in 6 more weeks and see what you decide. I mean, if Deion Burks comes back and this offense starts working again, you can blame it on the receiving core. If Deion Burks, Andrew Anthony, and Nick Anderson come back and the offense becomes explosive, you had a problem with the receiving core. It's just what's not changed with this offense, Caleb, what's not changed through 6 games is that there are so many problems, be it penalties, be it injury, be it execution, be it play calling. There are so many problems that one thing's not going to be the solution. I've come around a little bit on the fire Seth Luttrell thing. I'm not 100% against it, but I don't believe it's going to fix anything this season. It's not going to make anything better. All you're going to do is probably divide your locker room. So I say that's false because there's nobody on that program that's going to do better with what they have. That was a long answer. It's a long answer, and I'd want to hear I really do want to hear your thoughts.
I kind of disagree with you on the divide the locker room. I don't think anybody likes Seth Luttrell. I mean, I don't understand how you have 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You only score 3 points, and then afterwards, you don't say a single thing to your team. I had some tough losses in high school football. I had some moments where I didn't really want my coach to talk, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, after those tough losses, I mean, I lost a state championship 84-80, I think it was, something like crazy like that. It was like it went to 6, 7 overtimes. It was a tough, tough loss. But if our coach just didn't talk to us afterwards, I would have been pissed. Because you need explanations.
Mm-hmm.
You need something from your coach. And for not either him nor Joe John to step up and be like, hey guys, something's got to change. It might be on us. It might be on you guys. 3 points is unacceptable or just something. But instead, you say nothing. We're already seeing the defense kind of their temper starting to flare because
Yeah.
they know that they're a great defense, but yet their offense can't do nothing. We're already seeing that. So I think firing Seth Luttrell, changing play callers, doing something gives your defensive guys like, hey, okay, they're gonna attempt to change this offseason. If you keep the same staff, you keep how if it doesn't change, I get it. If you get Deion Burks, Andre Anthony, Nick Anderson, you get those guys back, and this offense looks completely different,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll be like, okay, try it 1 more year. But if you get those guys back and nothing happens, even if you don't get those guys back and nothing changes from this offense, you're gonna lose guys. You're gonna lose because we have a lot of studs on this young defense. Again, and we'll talk about that later. We have a good incoming class, but these guys are going to start checking out. So I don't think that firing Seth Luttrell or changing up anything is gonna divide the locker room. 'Cause I think he's already lost the locker room. I think that's why he didn't talk. Because I think everybody's kind of done with him.
I mean, if what you're saying is true, now at least be fair enough to say that's an assumption.
It is assumption.
But if what you're saying is true, then Latrell needs to go right now.
I think he does. Because you look at it, you're 2 plays away, defensive plays away from being 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
You had the safety against Houston that wins you the game. You had the pick six against Auburn that wins you the game. Take those away, you're 2-4. I get that without the safety, we're still up 14-12,
Right.
but Houston had all the momentum. That defense was gassed. That defense was frustrated. I think you take away that safety, there's a great shot that Oklahoma loses that game. You take away that pick six against Auburn, we 100% lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if that's an incomplete pass, even if we stop them short and they punt, I don't have faith in that offense to go down and score.
Right.
So I something has to change, and it has to be. I'm honestly kind of mad that here at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday we haven't had an announcement
I
because
just keep going. I'm sorry.
you're gonna have guys that start to check out. You're gonna have Billy Bowman, Danny Sussman thinking, why am I laying my body on the line to lose week in, week out when it's not my fault? You're gonna have guys like Jaden Jackson, who's been a stud true freshman, think, I'm not from Oklahoma. I don't really have too many ties here. Do I want to play for a team where the offense can't do anything when we get them the ball back time in and time out? You're gonna start losing these guys. They're gonna start checking out mentally, and this is gonna get uglier and uglier. Something has to change.
I, and again, I can't really argue anything that you're saying other than I, I, I just, I just don't know how to fix it. I don't know that, I don't know that, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that you put Joe John Finley as the play caller. You put anybody as the play caller. You bring Cale Gundy back. Never going to happen. Um, um, you bring him back as a play caller. None of that is going to work. And so none of that's going to work. Because I think the problem is X's and O's as well as Jimmy's and Joe's, as well as the coaching. There's not, I guess what I'm saying is the offense, I firmly believe the offense is so broken. You fire the play caller, it doesn't fix it. I mean, I don't think there's a one-stop shop to fix the problems. And if you fire Seth Luttrell, see Brent Venables, he's earning his money because if you fire Seth Luttrell, who comes to this program knowing the offensive line was not Seth Luttrell's? He inherited that. Bill Bedenbaugh got caught off guard with the green kid going to Missouri and all these things that happened with this offensive line. It's not a good offensive line. It is not a good offensive line. Seth Luttrell didn't recruit that offensive line. Bill Bedenbaugh did. Seth Luttrell doesn't have control of the receiver room and the health of those guys. So there's two big issues right there that Seth Luttrell has no control over in his first season as a play caller. And if you fire him, then the next guy down the road is going to be like, I mean, I don't know if I want to go there. They're going to pay me a bang load of money, but if so-and-so gets hurt or this is out of my control, I'm going to get fired. So it kind of puts a stain on the position and the program and the coaching staff if the next guy can't come in and deliver a home run immediately. But the flip side of that is if you're Brent Venables and you keep Seth Luttrell and it doesn't work again next year, then now Brent Venables is going to be feeling the heat. Right now, all the heat's going to Seth Luttrell. And there's heat that kind of goes at Brent Venables. But if Seth Luttrell becomes the fall guy, then all that heat comes off of Brent Venables, and everybody hates Seth Luttrell. He was the problem. But if you keep him and thinking that things are going to get better because everyone's going to get healthy, and then it tanks again next year, now Brent Venables is the fall guy. It's a tough shot. I mean, it's just a tough situation. And it's Brent Venables, like I said, he's earning his money off of this right here.
All right. We'll go on to our next true or false question. True or false, South Carolina is now a must-win game.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. You're 1-2 in conference play. You're 4-2 on the season, 2 wins away from bowl eligibility. You have to be bowl eligible. You have to be. You know you've got Maine kind of in your back pocket, but you don't want that to be the 6th win. You've got to win South Carolina. This is a home game against a team that got a bad break. I mean, they got a bad break in that Alabama game, but they went toe-to-toe with the Tide. Oklahoma absolutely has to win this game.
I mean, and like you said you don't want Maine to be that 6th win, but looking at the remainder of the schedule, it's outside of Maine, South Carolina's the easiest game left.
Well, again, that just adds more to the intrigue of this is a game that you have to win.
100%.
I agree wholeheartedly. That is true. The season is teetering right now. I said this about USC in our Friday locks pick. I picked USC was a 4-point underdog to Penn State. Penn State's one of the top 5 teams in the country. I picked USC to cover that 4-point spread because it was a game at home, and their season is teetering. That loss is really going to kind of plunge them south. Oklahoma is in the exact same position this Saturday against South Carolina. The season is teetering. You've lost 2 of your last 3 games. You got to win Saturday. You have to win, hands down, no doubt about it. That is a game that if you lose, it's going to go bad. It's going to go bad fast for the Sooners.
I mean, I would 100% agree with you. It's time to, really see what this team's made of because honestly, if we don't beat South Carolina, I don't think we're going to a bowl game.
I mean, I can't. There is always the danger of the overreaction, but at this point, Caleb, I don't think I can disagree. I don't think I can say, well, they could put together at Ole Miss. They could put together at Missouri. They could put it together at LSU. Oh, no, you still got a home game against Alabama. You're right. I mean, what you're saying is this schedule's not going to get easier. It's not going to get easier, not even a little bit.
Not at all. That's all the true or false questions I got for you. It was hard to think of some this week. I could have gone like 12 about just Seth Luttrell alone, but I decided not to do that.
Right.
But it was hard to muster up 4 true or false questions.
Well, that's a good way to start, and we spent a lot of time going through those 4, so they were good questions. This is the Sooner Nation podcast. We got so much more. What needs to change for Oklahoma's offense? I don't know. We'll talk about it. We got some defensive issues we've got to discuss, and then is Brent Venables the kind of guy who struggles in the big games? We're going to talk about all of that right after this. Oklahoma's first of all, that was such a long opening segment. Kudos to you, man. That good true or false time, Caleb. Oklahoma's offensive struggles, they're so well documented. Michael Hawkins, 19 of 30 for 148 yards. Javante Barnes, 14 carries, 38 yards, 2.7 yards per carry average. Kearney was the leading receiver, 4 catches, 45 yards. Bauer Sharp, 3 catches, 21 yards. Brennan Thompson, 3 catches, 19 yards. It's just it's just anemic. I mean, 19 of 30 on the cusp is not terrible, but that's 11 incomplete passes. Quinn Ewers had 9 incomplete passes, but he goes for 199 yards, 6.9 yards per throw average. Oklahoma's quarterback 148 yards, 50 yards less, 4.9 yards per carry average. It's just a bad offense, Caleb. It's a bad offense, and I've already shared my 2 cents. I don't know what needs to change other than just to say all of it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of right there with you. And I think I know I've been harping on play calling since Temple,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you got to look at the play calling, and some of it just didn't make sense. I felt like we would have advantages, and then we would just get away. I get that you just don't want to keep running over the same plays over and over and over again, but I feel like when our offense really started struggling, it's when we were calling the same plays over and over and over again that weren't working.
Yeah.
I mean, I you mentioned Brendan Thompson's 3 catches. 2 of those were for screenplays, and we just never went back to him. And I get that you don't just want to keep showing the same thing, but we ran a lot of screenplays against Auburn, and we didn't really see too many of those.
Mm-hmm.
That first drive where we missed the field goal, even the drive that we kicked the field goal made it. We saw them roll in the pocket. We saw them attacking the middle, and then that just kind of stopped. We stopped seeing those play calls. We started seeing them try to go outside. Uh, and that's why I'm like, you have to find something because I don't know what's going on in Seth Littrell's mind. I don't know what he's thinking, but I just feel like the play calls that he continuously calls, are the ones that don't work instead of the ones that do work. I mean, I love the aggression. First drive, I think it was the second play of the game. We take a shot to JJ Hester down the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
Well covered, incomplete pass. Never went back to that. And talking about making it easier for Hawkins, nobody respects our deep ball. And it's not because necessarily we can't complete them. It's because we don't call them. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can count on our single hand how many times we called deep shots this season. And I get
Are
that.
they not calling them, or are the quarterbacks not throwing them?
I mean, just looking back at the game, I rarely saw any deep shots. I think the deepest shot that he had that he missed was Sawcheck slipped out of the backfield. No one picked him up, so he just kept on running.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple times where Hawkins missed. I mean, and it's not new. He missed guys in the flat against Auburn. He continued to miss guys in the flat this past Saturday. But at the same time, I mean, you could tell from the way that play was just called, was designed, it was a straight 2 steps back, let it sling to where only JJ Hester can get it.
Mm-hmm.
If he can't get it, no one else can. And that's exactly what they did. And I don't mind those type of calls every now and then because you got to keep this defense honest. And
Yeah.
that
Keep going. Sorry.
to me, that's the biggest thing that needs to change is one, there's no creativity of this offense. And I get you want to say, oh, well, you're down 5 receivers, you're got a banged up offensive line that hasn't been great, but you had 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to find something that works. In 3 points, there is no trick plays. There is no something. I mean, Texas kept running double passes.
Mm-hmm.
Texas was creative. I get Texas offense had a lot more momentum than Oklahoma offense did. But I mean, going back to one of their punt, I mean, they were three and outs in a row, and they're like, okay, something's not working. What we got to do? We got to do a double pass. They called it a double pass. It felt incomplete, but they were doing something to try to change the game plan. And that's my biggest just knock against Seth Luttrell is after 6 games, he does not seem to stray away from his game plan. He has his set list of plays he wants to call. If those don't work, he's just gonna hope for the best. And that's my big concern is with getting like letting someone else call the plays. If it's Joe John, if it's Emmett Jones, if it's DeMarco Murray, if freaking Brent Venables wants to call plays, let him call plays.
Mhm.
Something has to change.
Again, I just I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. My opinion, my thought hasn't changed. I know you want to talk about coaches on the hot seat, and so I may say something different there, but I think the playbook's very thin. But I think it's very thin because there's not a lot that this offense is capable of. I think Seth Luttrell is frustrated. I think Brent Venables is frustrated. I think the players are frustrated. And you've been in football locker rooms. There's a lot of testosterone. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of anger that goes around because no one wants to own up to what's the problem. But nothing's working. And the most elementary rule of football is one play builds on another, both sides of the ball. You do one thing to set up something else. And I do know that Oklahoma fans have complained because all they do is call plays up the middle. And now they've complained. All they do is attack the edges. Well, the middle's not working. And you wanted them to attack the edges. Now the edges aren't working. And you want them to go back to the middle. What does that tell you? It tells you that this team, they don't have blocking up front of the offensive line. The receivers that are playing, they can't block either. It's just, they're so limited in what they're capable of doing. And I do believe you can make legitimate arguments against the coaching staff. I just kind of went down that road in the first segment. But you can't give the players a pass. You can't give the players a pass. Yeah, there was no creativity, but maybe there's no creativity because it doesn't matter if you can't block. So I just think again, it's just bad. It is a historically bad offense that what Oklahoma's putting out there right now. And if you think just getting a new guy in there is going to fix the problem, you're wrong. It may set a new course, but it's not going to fix the problem. So that begs the question is, who are the coaches on the hot seat? Now, I've got an answer that's going to be a nuclear option, but I want to hear what you got to say first. So, Seth Luttrell. Everyone wants Seth Luttrell gone. And I know you're on that same side, Caleb, but give me who else?
See, for me, I have Seth Luttrell at my number 2 coach on the hot seat. I have one coach above him,
Okay.
and that's Joe John.
Okay.
I mean, co-offensive coordinator, so he's just as much to blame as Seth Luttrell, but he's also the tight end coach. And tight ends have been just plain pathetic this season.
Have they?
I mean, go to the Auburn game. Who kept messing up the big plays?
Mm-hmm.
Tight ends. Go to Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. Who were the ones to penalize the most? Tight ends. Tight ends can't block. Tight ends can't line up correctly. Tight ends can't stop jumping. They can't stop holding. And I get we've talked about it, and you said that's more of a player issue than a coach. But I disagree. If it's happened week in and week out, what are we paying Joe John for? He's not making
Mm-hmm.
adjustments. He's not trying to correct those. And if he is trying to correct those, he's not doing a very good job. I mean, this tight end room has been terrible. I mean, we talked about Braden Willis. He was the last decent tight end we've had.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Who is better than Braden
No, I'm
Willis?
just talking about you're wrong on your assessment of the tight ends.
How am I wrong with my assessments of the tight ends?
Bauer Sharp is the second leading receiver on this team with 21 catches, 180 yards, 8.6 yards per reception. Then you've got Roberts averaging 11.3 yards per reception. The longest play to a receiver is JJ Hester at 60 yards. That was the Auburn game. You've got Jalil Farouk, 47 yards on the open, his only catch of the receiving of the season. Pettaway had 46 yards against Tennessee. Beyond that, the next guy down the list is Bauer Sharp, 35 yards. Jake Roberts, he's got 28 yards. I think consistently the most consistent group on the offense has been the tight ends.
But have they not made big mistake after big mistake?
Who hasn't? Jackson Arnold, big mistake. Offensive line, big mistakes. Wide receivers, big mistakes. Who hasn't made big? The whole offense is inept. But I feel like the number one guy on your list is the only guy who's produced anything of consistency. The only consistent threat you have in the passing game right now is the tight ends. It's the only consistent threat you have.
But then 9 out of 10 times it gets taken away because of another tight end.
Well, 9 out of 10 times is a huge exaggeration. But yes, the tight ends have made mistakes. Yeah, I get that. I'm not taking away penalties, and I'm not saying that those are like clean things and just bad calls by the refs or whatever. But Jacques Pettaway has taken away big plays because of blocks in the back. You could go down the list. You had 2 false starts on the punt team Saturday, 2 false starts back to back. You've had holding calls. You've had
one of those false starts was a tight end.
Well, but I'm saying is, across the board, you've got every position group. No position group is free of a bad mistake. But on the flip side of that is the only position group that has consistently delivered as a threat, not a big threat, but at least a threat, has been the tight ends.
My issue is go back to the Auburn game. You had the Bauer Sharp big 50-yard play gets taken away by Jake Roberts.
By Jake Roberts, right.
Go a couple plays later, we get a pretty decent first down run taken away by a holding penalty by Jake Roberts. Then it's a false start by Bauer Sharp. Backs us up. Next thing you know, we're in a 3rd and 9. And then Caden Helms, I think his name, he false starts. Now we're at 3rd and 19. And it was all the same drive. And it was just 4 penalties that just directly changed the offensive drive.
Okay, but you're nitpicking because you could also, again, call out Jack West Pettaway for a block in the back. That was unnecessary. You call out JJ Hester for the same thing. You can go down and you can talk about every position group ending a drive. You can talk about running backs. Taylor Tatum fumbled the ball. A good run, but it ended in a fumble. There's every position group, Caleb. Every position group has made drive-ending mistakes.
I agree.
Be it a penalty, be it a turnover, be it a bad read. You just spent the first part of the podcast talking about the mistakes Michael Hawkins made. And not throwing the ball too soon, not throwing the ball away, eating the sack. There isn't a position group that you can pick that's just been great. But there is one position group that you can say has produced. And you look here. Here's what it comes down to for me. This is why I'm so adamant against this right here. What it comes down to for me is this: receivers, way worse than they were a year ago in 2023. Quarterback play, way worse than it was a year ago in 2023. Offensive line, way worse than it was a year ago in 2023. Running backs, way worse than they were a year ago in 2023. Tight ends, Tight ends have far exceeded their productivity of 2023. It's the only position group that's beating their averages from last year. Not just matching. There's not a position group they have in the offense that's even matching their averages from last year, but the tight end group is beating their averages from last year. And that's the one guy, that's the first guy on your list you want to fire. I don't get it. I'm not saying Joe John Finley's above reproach. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to have a conversation and sit down and talk, but I'm saying he's not going to be first on my list.
I just feel like you pointed out a block in the back from Jaquez Petaway. You pointed out there's a penalty on JJ Hester, but I just feel like it's the tight ends when the offensive flag is thrown. Majority of the time, it's a tight end, and I feel like this is something that you're just missing. You just kind of okay, everything's bad, but they have a little bit of good. And I don't think the good outweighs the bad.
Okay.
Because I feel like the costly penalties have outweighed the play of the tight ends.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to keep arguing with you. I think it's bad across the board. And again, the tight ends have been productive. So who's number two?
Number two is Seth Luttrell, and we've kind of already touched on him with play calling, offensive schemes, just offense just looks terrible. And we've touched on him enough, so we can go to my third guy. And I think we're going to agree on this guy, and that's Bill Bedenbaugh. He and I understand he's had a banged up squad, but this offensive line has not looked great past couple of years. I mean, you take Wanya Morris, you take Tyler Guyton out. What has this offensive line done?
So you take away the NFL caliber guys, and they're a terrible offensive line. That's what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying take out there's two guys.
I mean, you take away Creed Humphrey, and that line was awful. You know, I mean, I look, man. Is there NFL talent right now in this offensive line? Not right now. I mean, there's guys that could develop, but right now, no. Is that on Bill Bedenbaugh? Absolutely, absolutely. But if there's a guy whose track record should earn him some grace, it's Bill Bedenbaugh.
That's why
he's the guy that deserves. If anybody deserves, hey, let's talk about this. What is your plan to fix it? Type conversation. It's Bill Bedenbaugh.
That's why he's my number three, because I get it. He has a track record, but it's not like the lines he had with. I mean, you say take away Creed Humphrey, he still had Cody Ford, he still had Drew Samia.
I'm just saying
he still had other caliber guys.
The point I'm making is he has consistently put guys in the NFL. He has consistently developed guys into NFL players that came to Oklahoma not really thinking they were going to be an NFL guy. Wanya Morris came to Oklahoma because of Bill Bedenbaugh.
100%. And Tyler Guyton was a defensive lineman that they turned into and so I'm saying he has done stuff, but
so he didn't suddenly forget how to coach. It's a new era, and guys came and dropped bags of cash on some of his top dudes, and he wasn't planning on losing them.
And and to his credit, Caden Green was playing pretty dang well at the end of the season last year, and he got benched against UMass this week. And so, yes, I think Bill Bedenbaugh should not be on a hot seat. That's why he's my number three. But what's his other title? It's offensive line coach in what?
Co-offensive coordinator.
No.
Right? No, what is it?
He's a run game coordinator.
Oh, run game coordinator. Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Be very careful what you say next, but keep going.
And the run game just has looked lackluster.
Okay.
And so part of that, I feel like it does go on his shoulders.
Right.
Because of the schemes.
Okay. So then you're willing to do the same thing for Emmett Jones, right?
100%.
Okay. That's all I want to make. I just want to make sure if you're
But
willing to do that for Bill Bedenbaugh, the guy who has clout, then you got to be willing to do that for Emmett Jones.
but I also feel like Emmett Jones gets a break because he has 5 guys out.
Okay.
Does he not?
Yeah, but is he not in charge of developing the guys underneath those 5? Have they gotten better in the 7 weeks, the 6 games? I mean, is JJ Hester was almost the crown jewel of that recruiting class that went to Missouri. Has JJ Hester developed under Emmett Jones?
I mean, just
The
because he was
answer is
a crown.
no. What about Kearney? What about Reagans?
Those are both
What?
true
I'm just
freshmen.
saying. I'm just saying. If your job is to develop talent, then why is JJ Hester not up to par for what he was at Missouri?
He wasn't anything at Missouri.
No, go back and look. His best season as a collegiate athlete happened at Missouri. He's not equal to that at Oklahoma.
He's also been hurt at Oklahoma.
So apparently, that's the thing that happens, I guess.
And also, Emmett Jones hasn't been here throughout his tenure.
I'm not saying he has, but what I'm saying is, how long has Emmett Jones been on this staff?
2 years.
Who are the receivers he's developed in 2 seasons?
I mean, the main guy, Farouk, hurt. Andra Anthony, hurt. Jaden Gibson, hurt. And then it'd be JJ Hester.
Okay.
Who was hurt all last year.
Who's the NFL guy in that group that you just listed?
Nick Anderson?
1.
Andra Anthony?
Is he? Because Andra Anthony's career has been injured. He was injured at Michigan. He's injured at Oklahoma.
But was he not a definitely NFL caliber receiver
until he got injured?
Healthy?
Are you going to take a flyer on him? Or are you going to take him as a undrafted free agent? Because he's a guy who gets injured everywhere he goes.
I think Farouk is a 7th round guy, 6th, 7th round guy. We have to see what he does when he gets back from injury.
The point I'm making is, if you're going to put Bill Bedenbaugh on the chopping block because he's the run game coordinator, you've got to put Emmett Jones on the chopping block because he's the passing game coordinator.
And I agree, but I also feel like he does get a pass. Because we want to talk about a guy he developed. Look at Jaden Gibson. His first year, couldn't catch a cold. Couldn't touch sand if he fell off a camel. Go to the next year. What?
Nothing. Keep going. I don't even want to touch that phrase, right? Like what you just said. I'm just going to pretend like I didn't hear it. Keep going.
He comes back the next year, and he's a totally different player, was he not? Did Jaden Gibson not make big strides between his true freshman and redshirt freshman season? Or was he a sophomore?
Is Jaden Gibson a star? Jaden Gibson is not a star. I mean,
we don't know that. I mean, he was a young guy last year who, I mean, Drake Stoops was the number 1 target last season, who was a 6-year senior. Nick Anderson, who was a freshman All-American. Farouk, who has been here, who's been a program guy. So, I mean, are we going to really fault him for being a redshirt freshman last year and not making strides?
How many catches? How many catches do you think Jaden Gibson had in 2023?
I think he had 13.
He had 14.
14.
His longest was 59 yards. So you're going to stake the receiving coach's reputation on a guy who caught 14 passes. For his career at the University of Oklahoma, he's caught 15 passes.
I'm just saying, was he not a totally different player in year 1 and in year 2?
Yeah, but he wasn't a dynamic player. And look, you've got 5 guys, your top 5 receivers. The top 5 guys at your position are injured, right? Of those top 5 guys, how many of them got injured actually playing in a game? Two. I'll answer the question. Jalil Farouk went down in a game and Burks went down in a game. So what are you doing? What are you doing that 3 of your top 5 receivers are out before the season starts? You're the positions coach. They're getting hurt in practice. What are you doing that is costing you your top 5 receivers? And
Well,
you're saying just give them a pass.
I know for both Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson, they got hurt doing best on best, which is a Brent Venables drill. And we've seen guys get hurt in this drill every single year he's been on campus. So if you want to take it that route, does that fall on Brent Venables?
I mean, I think when that's his position, those are his guys. You're down the top 5 guys. You got to take some ownership of that.
Okay. I can agree with that. But just let's go back to Beatenbow. How many guys did he have out before the season starts? Does he have? I mean, it's the same thing. He's got to take ownership of that.
I'm not saying he doesn't. All I'm saying is Bill Beatenbow is the one guy on this offense that has the track record and the clout that should earn him some grace. There's no other guy on this offensive coaching staff who has that. No other guy.
I agree. And another guy I think is not above being thrown out there is DeMarco Murray.
Yep. I don't look. Let me save you some time. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I just think maybe the order is wrong. And
who would you have at number 1?
My number 1 right now, if we're going to fire somebody, if we're firing people, it starts with Seth Luttrell. It starts the next guy is let me just say this. At this point, I am anti-firing anybody for this reason right here. Because the nuclear option is you got to fire them all. You got to fire everybody. It is the first year of Seth Luttrell. It's his first year, and it's been a debacle. It's been horrible. It has been awful. Now, ultimately, everything rides on his shoulders. So if you're going to fire somebody, he's the first guy. But then you look at the position groups below him. Offensive line, atrocious. Running backs, atrocious. Receivers, atrocious. The only thing that I think is salvageable, the only guy that you could say has done something is going to be Joe John Finley and the tight ends. And the X's and O's of this are there. The productivity is there. Blocking someone in the back, jumping off sides, the false start, the holding, that's execution. That's on the guys on the field. And how many, Caleb, you played, how many of your false start penalties were on your coach? How many of your holding penalties were on your coach? Those are on the player. But if the coach puts you in a position to be successful, that's what he's supposed to do. And the only guy who's putting players in a position to be successful is Joe John Finley. He's the only one. And so if we're going to fire guys for their position groups not managing well, then you got to fire them all. Because there's not a position group across the board that's playing on the same level it did a year ago, except for the tight ends. And so that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of a ridiculous argument to start talking about firing position guys, because they're all failing. Every single one of them is failing right now. And so if you're going to fire one for lack of productivity, you got to fire them all. But we don't want to fire Emmett Jones. We don't want to talk about firing Emmett Jones because of the way he recruits. Same thing with DeMarco Murray. But where's Taylor Tatum? Where's Javonte Barnes? Where's Gavin Sawchuk? He was the Gatorade Player of the Year. What are these guys doing? They're coming to Oklahoma, but they're sure not having good careers. Gavin Sawchuk rushed for 100 yards in 7 consecutive games to close out 2023. He hasn't sniffed that in 2024. Why? Where's Tawee Walker? Did we not? We talk about missing Dylan Gabriel. Can we not talk about missing Tawee Walker? That dude got it right. He was like, I'm not staying for this. I'm out of here.
What 100%.
So the point is, I'm sorry, I'll let you finish because we're actually that we went off the rails. Great job, Caleb. I'm not saying that sarcastically. This has been a great lineup, a great way to talk, but we're almost out of time again, and we've only done one commercial break. So kudos to you, our listeners, because you only get part-time commercials, and we're just going to just not pay the bills with this podcast. But the point is this: I am not in favor of firing a coach at this moment, but I'm firmly on board. If you're going to fire anybody other than Seth Luttrell, you got to fire them all, except for maybe Bill Bedenbaugh. He's the only guy that's got a track record that I believe you sit down with him and you say, it's broken. What would you do to fix it? He's the only guy who's earned that right based on what he's done consistently with the talent that he's brought in. DeMarco's not doing that. Emmett's not done that. No one has done that other than Bill Bedenbaugh. And the biggest travesty of them all, which falls on Brent Venables' shoulders, is there is no true quarterback coach on this offense. So regardless of what Brent does with Seth Luttrell, he's got to get a quarterback coach.
No doubt. That is one of the biggest swing and misses that I've seen by a coach in a long, long time. I mean, that rivals Lincoln Riley not having a special teams coach.
Right.
And I know we got to get a break. I just want to throw this
we're
one
not
thing
going
out.
to get a break. We've only got 6 minutes left. So there's again, kudos to listeners, limited breaks. Go ahead.
I just want to throw this out there. I just want to defend myself. I did not get holding penalties and I did not get false starts penalties.
Lies.
If I got a penalty, it was unnecessary roughness for a late hit.
Okay. But I know you got false starts and I know you got holding penalties. But let's say it's a late hit and let's say it's unnecessary roughness because you did get those as well. That's not the coach's fault.
100%, because he told me to be aggressive and I was just following his
lies. All right. I want to spend our last 5+ minutes on this. Does Brent Venables struggle in big games? And these are your notes. He's lost 2 big road games this year. The Red River Rivalry is not really a road game, but I get what you're saying.
That was last year. 2 big road games
last year. My bad. I'm if I could read it would help me. He's 1-2 in the Red River Rivalry now. He's 0-2 in bowl games. I think it's a fair question. I think the bowl games is probably that's a big story, but it's also a situation where you're handicapped by the bowls. The bowls that even you grew up watching, that era's gone.
Yeah.
It's now I'm not this game doesn't mean anything, and so I'm not hanging around for it. And so the bowl games become more of a guy that can maybe elevate his draft stock. So he's playing. These guys are hitting the transfer portal like Dylan Gabriel. These guys, they know they're a top 3 round draft guy, so they're not playing. And now that you're going to a 12-team college playoff, it's going to be even less. And so the 0-2 record in a bowl game, is it frustrating as a fan? Yeah, especially when you look at how they lost the Alamo Bowl because it was a turnover machine. But the point is, bowl games are basically at this point a jump start on spring practice. That's all they are. And so I don't hold the weight there as much as I do. You've been blown out in 2 of the last 3 Red River Rivalry games. That's where I say that's a big deal.
And I just want to jump on. Last year, I get it, big win over Texas. Then you drop to Kansas on the road. Then you drop to Oklahoma State on the road. And both those games were very, very winnable.
Mm-hmm.
And then we won't talk about his road record his first season because that team was just not that great.
Right.
But you go to these bowl games, and I will throw this in his defense. You have Eric Gray in the Cheez-It Bowl against Florida State. You win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe both Barnes and Sawchuk had 3 fumbles in the fourth quarter that allowed Florida State to come back. You have Dylan Gabriel last year. You win the Alabama Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But it's still 0-2. It's still 1-2 in the Red River. It's still 2 big, and not even that, but you go to that BYU game and pick 600 yards for Billy Bowman away from losing that game.
Yeah, but man, I have a problem saying if this play didn't happen, you
And
lose. I mean, you
and
won the game.
and you
There's
go
enough there to criticize a guy that you don't have to say, well, if you take away this play, they lose that game as well.
and you give him credit, and I was going to finish, and you give him his credit. It is his defense, and it was a defensive
Right,
player,
right.
but he struggles in road games, and I feel like he does struggle in big games, and I don't know if that's totally on him. I think as of right now it is because you go to this Red River game. I'm not gonna really count him off too much for the 49-0 because you had Dylan Gabriel with concussion protocol. You had General Booty who woke up with an eye fungus, and then you had Davis Bevel who couldn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure my 2-year-old nephew can throw it further than he can. So I'm not gonna knock him for that one, but still 1-2 in the. I mean, I know it's a joke. Oh, it's Oklahoma Super Bowl. That's the biggest regular season game for Oklahoma, and that's the biggest regular season game for Texas. It goes both ways, and being 1-2 in that is just
Yeah.
to me unacceptable. And I you just, I just don't know. I'm not saying that Brent Venables is not the guy. He's definitely the guy I want as our head coach right now because just how drastically different this defense looks.
Mm-hmm.
But he has to get something figured out
And I think
for
that's
these
what it
big
is.
games.
I think that's what he's got to get it figured out. He's got the defense fixed. 1.5 seasons, he fixed the defense. He's got to spend some time fixing the offense now, and that's going to set his legacy. I do think he gets a little bit more of a pass than your average guy would. Because of the circumstances of the transfer portal and going into the SEC. Unfortunately, that's it. We spent the time arguing. It was a blast. We'll be back later on to talk South Carolina and midweek podcast. Caleb, you're an amazing host. Thanks for putting this together for us. Catch us on the website, heartland-sports.com. Enjoy your week, everyone.